Thank you. First of all, just a remark. One of the things I promised to do is to speak less and listen to John Malkinson all the time. Now, the time is 11:15. We are 16 minutes past our budgeted time. So in the spirit of punctuality, I beg your indulgence just for a few minutes to share some thoughts with you and a few thank yous. Well, first of all, President Ronald Lauder and distinguished members of the governing board, thank you very much. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your friendship, your courage, and this vote of confidence. And a very special thank you to a teacher of mine by the name of Michael Schneider, who is one of the greatest assets the Jewish world has known in this generation and has saved thousands of Jewish lives with modesty and with determination. And I hope, Michael, that you will stay in various roles with the World Jewish Congress for many years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a very, very important defining time for confidence. It's a defining moment for confidence, both for the Jewish world and for the family that's the World Jewish Congress. We are a global family. We're all bound by a shared history, a shared destiny, and a shared mission. Here today we have members of 45 communities around the world. And since the dark days of 1936, we have stood shoulder to shoulder and have overcome great adversity together. And together, united by our deepest commitment to Jewish values and ideals, we have held the world to a higher standard of responsibility and accountability. Now, this is also a profoundly meaningful moment for me. It's part of a journey, actually represents a culmination of a personal journey. Today marks the beginning for me of a public expression of what I would call a transformative love affair with Judaism, with Israel, and with Jewish affairs. This is a transformation that began in my late teens, which is about 5 years ago. So let me just share with you a little secret. When I was a 7-year-old child growing up in New York City, my mom and dad correctly diagnosed that I was suffering from a serious malady which Jewish doctors call Yiddishkeit deficiency. Now, being concerned and caring parents, they hired a private tutor. And first day, the tutor asked me, "Do you know what the Torah is?" And I said, "No." He said, "You know what Shabbat is?" I said, "No." So the tutor, who was very wise, began to open up to me the treasure trove of Judaism. She told me about the great Jewish heroes, about King Solomon, about King David, Jeremiah, and Isaiah. And at the end of the first session, the tutor became rather optimistic about me, thinking that I actually may have a future in Jewish affairs. She gave me a pop quiz. So she said, "Can you now tell me what a profit is?" And without a moment's hesitation, I said, "Of course I can. A profit is when you buy something for $5 and sell it for $10. Now, I can tell you 40 years later that I've come to understand what true profit is. The true profit lies in appreciating the depth and the strength of the Jewish people. True profit is found in the glory of our Jewish past, the miracle of our present, and the promise of our future. And today, once again, we stand ready to overcome the enormous challenges in order to secure that future and to fulfill that promise. Now, unfortunately, we face a revival of what others have spoken before me as the traditional hatred of Jews in some parts of the world. And at the same time, we're contending with a new and virulent strain of anti-Semitism, an outgrowth of what we call the unholy red-green alliance that targets the Jewish state while also demonizing Jews everywhere, whom they vilify as extensions of the Jewish state. President Lauder, distinguished members of the governing board, everyone in this room has been witness to the dizzying events unfolding in this part of the world. We watch with a sense of urgency, a sense of hope, and even trepidation as millions of our Arab neighbors rise up against despotic governments and tyrannical rulers from Tunisia to Syria, from Yemen to Libya. They are demanding human rights, political rights, and freedom. The Arab world is calling this the Arab Spring. Now, we don't know if the Arab Spring will blossom into a warm summer or descend into a cold winter. But what we do know for sure is this. There was another spectacular revolution for freedom that took place more than 3,000 years ago. And guess what? We Jews celebrate that revolution every spring, year after year. We might even want to call it the Jewish Spring. It happened when a reluctant Jewish leader named Moshe demanded freedom for his people from an Egyptian tyrant called Pharaoh. Now, that was the first time in history that a people rose up and demanded the right to freedom and liberty under law. That was the defining moment of history when a people demanded to become a free nation, seeking justice and self-determination. And it was this Jewish experience that would become the definitive ideal for freedom and liberty in the world. That powerful confrontation between an Egyptian despot and an Hebraic leader more than 3,000 years ago gave birth to the entire notion of human rights, of civil rights, of equal rights, which has shaped the free world today. This Jewish ideal would also serve as the foundation for the French and American revolutions and the birth of liberal democracy itself. And you know something? It inspired people like Dr. Martin Luther King, a great friend of the Jewish people and the Jewish state, when he declared on April the 3rd, 1968, in the Mason Christ Church in Memphis, Tennessee, Dr. King said, "I have been to the mountaintop, and I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land." Well, what Dr. King was talking about, that he was embracing the essence of the Jewish spring. He was embracing liberty. He was embracing freedom. He was embracing human rights and equality under God. He was echoing Moses by demanding that those values become a reality for the disenfranchised everywhere. But let us, the Jewish people, the very people who drafted the Manifesto for Universal Human Rights, who inspired so many democratic revolutions, who were the first to demand collective freedom and self-determination, embraced by billions the world over, as we celebrate the universality of human rights, let us always remember our particular Jewish rights. It's an amazing idea, isn't it? Like, even Jews have human rights. Why is standing up for Jewish rights so important? Because as the world increasingly embraces the language and agenda of universal human rights, ironically, the global political assault on our basic human rights, our Jewish rights, is intensifying. The double irony is that the Jewish state is the only state in the world whose rights to sovereignty were twice affirmed in the last century, first by the League of Nations and then by the United Nations. The League of Nations unanimously recognized our right to, quote, reconstitute their national home in that country. In other words, they too formally and officially recognized our natural and historic right to liberty and self-determination in the land of Israel. But today, the very notion of Jewish national self-determination is under assault in the name of human rights. The Palestinian ploy to obtain international endorsement of a unilaterally declared statehood is only the latest offensive on the very legitimacy of the right of the Jewish people to national self-determination in peace and security. Our Jewish rights are being eroded, and the World Jewish Congress will lead the campaign to recover them. Nachum Goldman founded the World Jewish Congress in 1936 because he understood that the world had abandoned the very Jewish rights that we're speaking about today. And we know how that default on our rights led to unspeakable tragedy. So let us stand together today. Let us uphold human rights, civil rights, equal rights, Jewish rights. The notion of Jewish rights goes beyond the Jewish nation-state. It extends to Jewish communities around the world. Jews have a right to live in freedom, democracy, security, and equality wherever we live. Tragically, the assault against the Jewish state has intensified anti-Semitic behavior throughout the world. But now, in 2011, we are confronting that challenge head-on. We will once again strive to hold the world to a higher standard, a standard of human rights and values that it failed to uphold during the Shoah and beyond. And we will remind the world of the values and principles that the World Jewish Congress worked hard to protect throughout its history. The scourge of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment is merely the new politically correct form of anti-Semitism. So while we protect national Jewish rights in Israel, we also defend the rights of all Jews throughout the world to live in freedom, security, and equality. Those are our Jewish rights. And the World Jewish Congress has always served as a champion of Jewish rights, from the Holocaust restitution to the Swiss banks, to exposing the identity of Kurt Waldheim, to supporting Soviet dissidents in their struggle for freedom. The power of the World Jewish Congress, truly the power, is in our ability to unite the Jewish world around these values and to stand firmly and courageously and even defiantly as a free people. Human rights, civil rights, equal rights, and Jewish rights. And just as we remember the courageous uprising of the Jewish people against tyranny over 3,000 years ago, our own Jewish Spring, let us here in Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the Jewish people, once again reaffirm to ourselves and the world our commitment to tikkun olam, to repairing the world that Nochi Dankner spoke of last night, through the implementation of these ideals. Let us demand that the world uphold the same rights and ideals and principles that began with the Israelites in Egypt, that were sanctified on Mount Sinai, and that brought us here to Jerusalem, and that have shaped the modern world, and must, for the sake of humanity as a whole, continue to shape our world in the 21st century. The World Jewish Congress will carry this torch forward. Human rights, civil rights, equal rights, Jewish rights. That is our eternal Jewish spring. May God bless the World Jewish Congress. Thank you very much.